Here is a jar of marinated goat cheese that I did not want to see die in the back of my refrigerator. So I challenged myself to use it all in my home cooking this week and see where it would take me. I ended up discovering a real good snack, working it into a few family dinners, and finished up the jar with a pretty fat loaf of focaccia. Trying new recipes can be fun, but they can also leave you with a bunch of leftovers and ingredients that you're not quite sure what to do with, and that often get neglected for just enough time until it becomes reasonable to trash them. My goal for the week was then to use up this whole jar while hopefully also making some good food. The marinated goat cheese recipe comes from Samin Nosrat's new cookbook, Good Things, and it's made by infusing oil with a bunch of aromatics and then jarring the oil with some goat cheese coins to hang out, creating one product which breaks down into two ingredients, the infused oil and the cheese. First up is a quick lunch toasty with cheese and dates. This is something that is mentioned in the book but isn't quite a full recipe. It was also my first attempt to engage my brain a bit by using the flavored oil to fry both the bread and the dates. Obviously, I want to make good food, and I find that restricting options and using what I have often leads to creativity in the kitchen. That being said, I totally lifted this toasty from the book, and it was honestly extremely good. Onto a braised bean recipe, which also comes from the book, and started with frying shallots in cheese oil and getting the beans going with the semi-spent herbs from the infusion. Again, the goal here is to make the food taste as good as possible by using what I have. With that in mind, I saved the cheese plus shallot oil to fry the garlic, lemon zest, chili flakes, and bay leaves that make up the base of the final dish in an attempt to layer in more flavor. The marinated goat cheese was the initial recipe that grabbed my interest, but I did want to see where else I could incorporate it into my cooking, and this is where the index of a cookbook can come in handy because it will often reference where ingredients and components pop up in other recipes. That's exactly where I found the braised butter beans with artichoke hearts and marinated goat cheese topped with crispy fried shallots. Immediately I was like, yeah, I kind of want to make that, and it was pretty much perfect for using up the cheese in a way that was new and pretty interesting to me. To go with the beans, I fried up some bread using the leftover cheese plus shallot oil, trying my best just to use it up and avoid packing it up in a Tupperware and putting it into the black hole of the fridge. Toast and beans are a pretty classic combo. Unfortunately, I kind of screwed up the bean execution here by not adding enough liquid to the beans. This may seem kind of minor, but it's actually quite crucial because beans seize up so fast when they come off the heat, and the right texture is so important. Having them on the dry side is no bueno, but yeah, that's what I did. Regardless, it made for a good family dinner. I do like to try to work in a bean affair to the meal rotation when I can. Here's a simple but great use, adding the cheese to a grazing board on a bit of an easy-ish weeknight meal. The herbs and lemon zest also make it feel a bit more special. A meal like this has a high impressive to effort ratio, just dropping shit everywhere, and it gives me a chance to use up whatever odds and ends are in the fridge, like fruit, veg, anything that's pickled or jarred, even some stale bread that might need reviving. After all that, I was left with some oily, cheesy dregs, which sounds appetizing, and I thought it might be interesting to use it up in a focaccia dough, which always calls for a large amount of oil. The hope was that any lingering flavor in the oil would carry through to the final product. Bread is a good vehicle for flavor because the interior is well insulated and preserves any delicate flavor as it bakes. Unfortunately, that was not really the case, which was kind of lame, but I am interested in trying again with some tweaks. It did eat up all the residual oil, which I'll still call a success, and it felt appropriate to make a focaccia given the whole Ligurian focaccia thing from salt, fat, acid, heat, and then also a sky-high focaccia recipe coming up in this book. So yeah, that's some home cooking with the intent of being resourceful and delicious. Again, a lot of the recipe inspo here came from Good Things by Samin Nosrat, which I will be continuing to cook from.